Hey guys, Coach Mac, welcome back to the Playfast Podcast. If you are new to this podcast, make sure you check us out and hit the subscription button on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Leave us 5 stars, leave a comment that we can talk about, and let's get into this new episode. All right, hey, what's up, guys? Coach Mac, Playfast Podcast. This is episode number 2 in season number 2. I'm joined again by my partner, Colby Grant. We are going to talk a little bit about season in review. What was my 22nd season as a head high school football coach, and actually my 25th year coaching football in general. So 25 years of coaching football, Colby. It's been a long run.
Yeah, I didn't know it was that long. Well, I knew it was pretty long, but I didn't know it was like that long. I mean,
25.
you randomly say it, but then it's kind of like, yeah, that's not that long. But then once you think about it, that's a long time. Just
Yeah, 25
dealing,
years, which is basically half my adult life,
but I
or
mean, it's but you could
half my
say,
life in general.
well, it's one of those things that at least it's something that you want to do. So that's always a positive.
Yeah, I mean, it's something I chose to do, something I wanted to do. So, that part of it is a positive, and it's just looking back on it, it's amazing to think that 22 years as a head coach now, and 25 years of football. It's a long time.
So I guess looking back at it, did you think that you would be here in the same position, or did you expect to be somewhere else? And are you like happy at where you are now, even if it wasn't where you expected it to be?
Well, I think that the original thought of moving to Florida was getting as close to year-round college football as you can get with spring ball and weight rooms. And I think when I was younger, I had the expectation that if I could do a good job, there would be possibly some college openings or a chance to go on and do it at the big time level. And I found out early on that football is a business, just like Wall Street, just like anything else. It's as much who you know as well. And so that was a little bit alarming at first. I just thought if you can go down and you can prove yourself that you can coach and you can relate to kids and you can do all the things with X's and O's, and you can run a program, that somebody out there will give you a chance to maybe coach at the next level. And it's not exactly like that. College football is a business. It's about who you know and who knows you. So, I would have hoped at this point in my life, I would have been doing it at a bigger level, but um, I'm always happy to be able to do the state of Florida, where football is so important and football is so good, and there's so much, and you can do it year round, and working on weight room stuff and getting ready for the ball. And it's it's kind of a whirlwind of a full year uh, job that goes on. So I mean, if I can't do it at the big time level, then this is about as good as it gets.
Yeah, that's true. And did you ever feel like, because I've always thought maybe like even like the videos that you put out on YouTube, maybe like a coach would see you or offensive coordinator would see you and be like, hey, let's like at least bring them in for an interview. Like, has anybody ever reached out based on just your YouTube videos and saying, hey, like just interview wise about getting maybe a coordinator job or just something in a higher level than high school?
I've never had any. I've had a few small college guys that have come in and say, "Hey, I watched some of your videos. I've seen some stuff." But from the bigger level of football, the level I'd like to be at, and the level that financially makes sense to make a move, none of those guys. I don't think those guys are scouring YouTube for help. At that level, they can go wherever they need to go. They can visit any college they want. They can visit NFL guys. So they're not really. I think the high school level is kind of the high school, junior high, Pop Warner. That's the perfect YouTube avenue, because those are always the coaches that are looking for help and looking to find different things. So just like me, I'm always searching YouTube and different things on social media, trying to find videos I want to watch so that I can, figure out if we want to make a change on offense or defense, or how I can do something better, or how I can coach something better. So I don't think the college guys are necessarily looking at it from that standpoint. There's been some small college guys that have come in and talked about videos that they watched on different things, which is pretty cool. But no, it's never gone anywhere in that direction, because I don't think the big timers, their network is it's so small in a way that they have agents, and they have friends, and they have people in the business that they know, and that's where they're going to go, because that job is so stressful, and you got to make sure you have the right people with you. So they don't often randomly go out and hire people. Usually when they make hires, they know exactly who they're hiring.
Yeah. I mean, as you said, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And I feel like that's in pretty much anything. But I think mainly in football, it just seems like I've talked to some of your former coaches, and he was just like, there's some people that he knows he's smarter than when it comes to football, but they're in that position because they have friends there and they really don't know what's going on. They're just like, I'm, I can get by, but like if someone smarter than me comes in, I look like an idiot, but I'm here and I'm making the money. So I guess that does make sense. So, but no, let's go into the season review. Orange Park, 3-7,
Yeah.
3-7. Two heartbreak losses, two or three.
Now, two blown leads, one 20-point lead that we should have won a game, and then another game that we had to lead the entire game until 5 minutes left in the game when the other team scored to take the lead. So, possibly could have been 5-5. Could have been outside looking in at the playoffs. But you learn from every season. You learn from all those games, and try and figure out what you need to do moving forward. We've got a couple seniors that are going to get a chance to continue their athletic career and their academic career in college, and then we've got the big time junior that's going to be the next year is going to be pretty interesting with how that recruiting process works. And we got some other younger kids that I think have a chance to play in college. So all in all, there's a lot of good things going on. We didn't win as many games as we wanted to win, but at the end of the day, yeah, winning and losing is how you're judged, and it's important. But at the end of the day, we're doing this job for a lot of reasons, and you're trying to get kids to understand, what they need to do in the classroom, what they need to do in practice, what they need to do in their daily life. And I mean, I think that's the hardest part. Is it's not so much the X's and O's, it's the fact that you've got to try and get through to a group of kids, that have their own ideas on what they think it takes, and then you're trying to give them your professional opinion of what it takes, and the positives and negatives that they bring to the table, how they help themselves, how they hurt themselves. And in a day and age where people don't want to accept a lot of blame, and people don't want to take a lot of accountability for their actions, and people want instant gratification. So that part of the job's gotten a little bit tougher, but that's also why you do it. That's why you're a high school coach, and that's why you show up to work every day. Is maybe the light bulb goes off for some of these kids. Maybe you reach some of them, maybe you don't. But that's can't save them all. You can try, but you're not going to save them all. But at the end of the day, that's why, if you're still doing it after 25 years, that's why you do it.
Yeah. No, I mean, last episode we talked about like keeping coaches and being able to stay. And we kind of touched on like we just got at our school, we just got a new AD and we got a new principal. So you were kind of in that limbo stage because you couldn't really go out and hire coaches. I don't want to say you didn't have any say on like this year anyway. But do you think like, and I don't want to say that had a factor on your season, but do you think that like, because I went to another high school, game and took pictures for them. And from looking from our sidelines versus theirs, they just had tons of coaches, whether they were just volunteers, parents, or just coaches that like football on the sidelines, controlling everything, making sure the special teams was ready, defense was ready. It's like an echo of what the coach said. And not saying that you don't have that, but you didn't have that like group of people. And do you think that is a factor in maybe a season like that, or do you think it's just, you know, as you said, blown plays, losing leads? Like, is the coaching really that big of a factor in high school?
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a huge factor, making sure your kids are prepared. So, at practice every day, making sure that you have all the things covered you need to cover, so you don't make those mistakes in the game. And, our staff, in our county, you can only have 7 other paid coaches along with yourself. So really, as far as paid jobs are concerned, there can only be 8 coaches. So when you go to other places, what you're seeing is volunteers, guys who either maybe former players, guys that own their own businesses or have their own free time to do some things and don't need the money. And so, every school is different. Some schools have larger staffs. I would have definitely liked to have had 3 or 4 more bodies at practice and during games. But at the same time, I'm not a huge fan of volunteers for what we do in high school football. There's a lot of time and effort, and it's very hard to sign somebody up knowing that you're going to get their full undivided attention when they're not getting paid for it. And even if they come to you and say, "Hey, look, I just want to coach. I don't want to get paid. I can be here every day. I can be here on weekends." You just got to remember, after Friday night games, you exchange film online with people, and then Saturdays you're expecting coaches to watch film and be ready to go for Sunday meetings, and then Sundays you're coming in and relaying the game plan to coaches. All right, this is what we need to do. This is how we need to do it. Let's take a look at the depth chart. Who's hurt? Special teams. Do we need to make any changes? And there's just so many things that go on. It's really a 6.5 to 7 day. It's a 7-day job for me, but so yeah, when we got caught last year, we lost 5 coaches that went to, 2 guys moved, one guy moved out of state, one guy moved down south, a couple other guys went to different schools. So it's the continuity of what you're teaching and what you're trying to do when you get people in, even in the off season with your weight program and your conditioning program. And, to me, that's what makes a guy like Nick Saban even better than everybody, makes him out to be. Every year he loses coaches because everybody wants his guys, and every year he loses coordinators, and he reloads and he finds one and he brings them in, and they're still able to do the same thing. And that's the hardest part, is it's the continuity of having, one vision, one goal, one direction, and this is what we do. And we try to talk all the time about what we think the OP football standard is, and that's one of the hardest things in high school, is getting kids to play to a standard every week, regardless of who you're playing. Last game of the year, it was cold and windy and a little bit rainy, and guys get upset, if they're playing skill positions because maybe can't throw the ball as much, and I'm slipping on the field, and there's a standard that you want to play to, you want to practice to, you want to work to, and once you get people on your side from administration down, what that standard is, and now you're trying to get some continuity in that standard. So, with the change in admin last year, with the change of principal, the change at AD, change, 5 coaches that turned over, it's just hard to keep continuity when you have things, I wouldn't say they were, necessarily rolling along, but we had them headed in the right direction. We, you know, got a bad year, turned around and got to 6-4 and played for a district championship. And, the next year we get in with the COVID stuff and we win a home playoff game, even though it's not the same playoff scenario, but, we felt like we had some things going in the right direction. And then when you can't keep the continuity because you've got constant coaching changes and then we had an admin change, it just makes it, really tough to do to keep it rolling. So that's the hardest part, not only the bodies and the amount of bodies on the sideline, because there's so much going on. You want guys that can control behavior. You want guys that don't have anything to do with maybe what's going on the field, but they have control of the sideline. And you want special teams guys that have things ready. So the more bodies, the more eyes you have, the better it is. But every school is its own situation.
Yeah,
Our program this year was the situation it was in, and you still got to go out and win games.
yeah. I mean, I think to an extent, if like at the school that I went to, like I felt like everybody was on the same page. And I think in some situations it is hard to have volunteers or parents come on the sidelines because it's why is my kid playing? Oh, my, like talking in their kid's ear, or having that one person on the sideline that thinks they should be the coach. And now, like, when, if you, hypothetically, you make a bad call, it's like they're on the sidelines in that player's ears, like saying, "Oh, well, I would have did this." So now it's like it's trying to make a coup. I think that's what it's called, and trying to go against the coach. And I think they're really good about that this year. I know, like previous years, I felt like I saw a lot of students on the side, previous or former students on the sideline, but this year I think that they kind of kept it in control to where it's just football players or myself or coaches on the field, and eliminating that distraction from them. Um, but no, going back to the season. So, like, going, like you said, you went to a player, you had a home playoff win last year, and this year, we're 3-7. Does that, and you've been coaching for a long time. So what does your mindset, like, how does your mindset feel about that? Because, like, as we all know, we have new principal, new AD. Does your mind, like, think of, okay, let me just get prepared for next year? Or is it one of those, like, should I go talk to them about maybe getting coaches, or like, what's the next step? Do you let them come to you, or do you go to them?
I mean, I think if you need coaches and you need help, you have to go to them. They've got their own job. They've got multiple sports to run, and principal has a school to run. So it's not like he's, constantly thinking about football every day. Um, you've got to go to them and be able to find some time to sit down and say, hey, look, here's what we need. We need some help. We need to, what teaching jobs do you think we're going to have open? What do you, you know, how many allocations do you think we're going to have? Um, talking to the AD about what district do you think we're going to be in? What are our numbers? Scheduling wise, what do we need to do with the schedule? Uh, how do you need to know about what the goal is. If the goal is to try and win as many games as possible, then scheduling is going to be a huge part of that, because you've got to go out and outside your games, you've got to find some teams that you can compete with, whether it be a talent level or level. Um, like in our county, we open up with Oakley. If they're an 8A school, have 1,500 more kids than we do. We need to play that game. It's the biggest gate as a home game for us. So we need to play it every year. But at the same time, if you're trying to be competitive and win as many games as possible, you don't need to be going out and playing 7A, 8A schools if you're trying to get something turned around. And, you look at some different programs around that had some success this year. Well, they scheduled their way into some success. And when you're down and you've been down, it's easier to find games. And then when you get it turned around and you start winning some games, then it makes it even tougher to schedule. So, because scheduling is basically up to each head coach, AD, principal at their school, it's always going to be a tough issue because everybody wants to win. So, everybody, when you make phone calls or you text people, or you see people at meetings and you're trying to set up a season or games or competition, and it's always hard to do because guys are always looking for the most favorable matchup. And uh, within our county, some schools, we got it to where at one point, at Ridgeview, I played everybody in the county. And then some things happened, and the transfer rules got a little bit crazy, and kids were bouncing all over the place. And then I decided that I didn't want to play certain people. And then, this year I decided that I didn't want to play certain people. So now within your county, if you're not playing people, you got to go out and find other teams to play. And for me, you know, until somebody comes and says you have to win 6 games to keep your job, I want to schedule good opponents. I want to schedule people that I think will travel fairly decent. So if we have a home game, we make a gate and a decent concession stand. And I want to schedule coaches I think I can trust with film, and guys that if they get up aren't going to run the score up, and if we get up, they know I'm not going to run the score up. Just when you've been doing it as long as I have, you know a lot of people in the business, and it's getting harder for me now because most of the people that I cut my teeth with are at the end of their career, getting out of the business, and there's all these younger guys in there doing it now. So, that part is tough because everybody wants to win. Winning is the big deal. Winning is what everybody. It's why they keep score, and it's just. I always said that I would much rather the state come out and say, "Here's the 10 games you got to play. Go play them. Here's your home games. Here's your away games." Because when you're leaving it up to coaches and ADs and principals trying to find schedules, what ends up happening is it's about who contacts who first. You got guys that are, you're not supposed to schedule until the new districts come out. We're going to be in a new district next year. If I wait till the district comes out, everybody's already scheduled their games. All the people that have lost and are out of the playoffs, they're already setting up their schedules. And, rightfully
That's,
so.
that was my next question.
Well, rightfully so. You should be able to, you're not playing anymore. You don't have anything else going on. You should be able to set up your schedule, and more people should answer the phone when you call, because obviously if you're 3-7 or you're not a playoff team, people should want to play those teams more than they want to play 8-2 playoff teams.
Yeah, and that, as I said, that was going to be my next question. Is like when does scheduling start for the end of the
It
season?
never really ends. I mean, if you're playing people that you want to continue playing after the game, you shake hands with a guy and says, hey, we're going to do it again next year. It's ongoing all the time, but technically by rule, you're actually supposed to wait till districts come out. And what a lot of guys do is a lot of guys are putting schedules together on paper and pencil. And, especially if you know each other, it's a lot easier to do. But because if you set up games certain weeks and the districts come out and you're all of a sudden in an 8-school district, well, those weeks you're going to have to call people back and tell them you can't play because now you have district games that you're mandated to play in. So usually for me, week 1, 2, 3, and 11 are usually safe. Even in the biggest, unless you get, like I said, unless you get in an 8-school district, even if you're in a 7-school district, you can probably assume that 1, 2, 3, and 11 are safe. So that's where we always try and get our county games if we can get them, and our games, the games when I used to be back at Ridgeview, I used to play St. Aug and Bartram, and that's always where I was trying to fit those games in year to year, because for us, the last couple of years, or the last probably 10 or 15 years I've been doing it, we've been in mostly 5 to 6 school districts. So it's been weeks 4, 6, 8, 9, 10. Those have been the district weeks. So I kind of know what weeks I want to go out and schedule. But, I always found it tough that people schedule before districts come out, and then the district comes out and you've got to call somebody back and say, hey, I'm sorry, we can't play. Well, now that person has to go find a game. And if they thought they had a game for 3 months and they didn't go out and try and find a game week 7, and you get thrown in a district where you have to play a district game week 7, and now you back out on them, it's a domino effect, because now they got to go find games, and it's not easy for them to find games.
Speaking, we're still kind of on the season review, because you've played some good teams that have had, I would think, a lot of D1 players on it. So, I mean, when I played with you, like we played Bartram and St. Augustine. I think it was my 11th grade year, my junior year. We got killed every week. But I want to say when you guys were losing, like, it's a new age. Obviously, you guys have huddle, and I think that's it. So, like, from my perspective, coming from someone that's not a coach, I get on Twitter, I'll get on Instagram, and let's say that you guys lose, and like the first thing I see is someone's highlight tape from like a big loss. Like, do you have any feelings towards that, or are you just kind of like, well, I mean, they got to get their highlights out if they want to get looked at? Or do you look at it as, well, we just got killed, and the first thing that you're worried about is your highlight? And I know other coaches have that same issue, but just obviously we're on a podcast. So, like, what is your thought process of it? Because like back when we got killed, I mean, I didn't want to show my face until Monday.
Well, you would think people would take losing personally, and it would be something that stays with you for a little while, and something that you're upset about. And we live in a day and age now where kids are worried about they're worried about playing college football, they're worried about getting looked at. And now that there is social media, back in the day when there was no social media, you had nowhere to put your highlights, so you didn't even worry about it. Back in the day where you couldn't just cut out clips off of the internet on Huddle, you had VHS tapes and other things. You couldn't, it took time to make a highlight. You couldn't just make a highlight. Nowadays with Huddle, kids can, as soon as I share the film, I'll go back in and I'll already see certain plays that are starred, or certain plays that are, kids can make their highlights at 1 o'clock in the morning after a game. And now that everybody wants to be seen and everybody wants to be noticed and recognized. And, some of them sometimes maybe without even thinking, or some of them not even thinking anything's wrong with it. You lose a game and Saturday morning you're posting your highlights. Hey, you know, I had a great game the other night, made so many tackles or sacks or whatever. Yeah, but we lost. That should be the number one goal every week should be to win. And we're just in at every level of football, including the NFL, we're in a day and age where that mentality is more of a dying breed. And guys are, everybody wants to kind of take care of themselves. I get it. It's a me profession, and coaches want to win, and coaches want to get better jobs, and coaches want to make more money, and kids want to go to college, and kids want scholarships. And, you know, in college, kids want to go to the NFL and they want to play in the NFL. So if they're not getting the ball enough, or if they're not getting the ball thrown to them, or if they're not playing the right position, all those things become a factor. But I talk to our kids all the time. Think about the first time you ever played football, whether it was schoolyard, sandlot, kill the carrier, whatever it was in your yard with your brothers, and they threw you the ball and beat the heck out of you. You never thought, the first time I started playing football, I never thought about playing in college. I never thought about coaching. I never thought about getting recruited. I just played, and I thought, how cool this game is pretty cool. I like playing. And now we've lost that aspect. It's become such a business, even at the high school level, that the kids think they're doing things in a business fashion, and they're not the love of the game. So shouldn't matter whether you're 3-6 and not going to the playoffs and it's 50 degrees and raining, or you're 9-0 going to the playoffs and it's 80 degrees and perfect. If you love playing football, none of those things should matter. It's one more opportunity to go out and play. And the thing I try and remind guys all the time of, it can be taken away, at any moment. You don't know when your last game could be. And then the thing that's always shocking to me is, two things that are shocking to me. Kids that go through the motions Monday through Thursday, and then if you lose on Friday, act like they're upset, or they act like they care. Well, if you care on Friday, why don't you do the things in practice every day you need to do? Why don't you do the things in the weight room you need to do? Why aren't you doing the things in the classroom you need to do? So part of that is almost an act where, like, on Friday, it's you're losing. You have to act a certain way. You have to show like you care. We have other kids that can't control their emotions. So when anytime something goes negative, or anytime something goes wrong, they have no idea how to act. They have no idea. So trying to change that behavior, trying to get guys to be mentally tough. There's just so much involved in it, and losing brings out the worst in everybody, and winning hides a lot of things. And, it's just one of those deals where, yeah, to me, as a person, it's really tough to see people put out highlights after you lose. And, and then after the season, to see guys this first week with no practice, you see guys going, oh, I don't know what to do. I don't know. Yeah, well, when you did have practice, you acted like to be there. And now that you don't have practice, you act like you have no idea what to do with yourself. You wish you could practice again. So 17, 18-year-old, 16, 15-year-old kids. At this juncture of my career, I have to understand that, it's getting more and more for me trying to figure out how to deal with today's generation and the types of kids we have at our school than it is worrying about what offense or what defense or what plays to call. I'm more into program development now than I probably ever was, and trying to figure out, how do we reach the kids we have? How do we change the mindset of the kids we have? And so I took the word stats, because all of our kids are so worried about their stats, right? So everybody wants their stats. I got to get my stats. So I took that word and I wrote it on the board, and I wrote down, strictly thinking about team success. And, I put it on my board at my office, and I wrote stats down, S.T.A.T.S. I wrote it down vertically, and then I wrote across, strictly thinking about team success. And I showed it to some of our guys, and I said, guys, here's the deal. Every time you play a team sport, this is all you should be thinking about. And if you think about that and you do it right, you'll get stats. You'll have stats. If you show up every day of practice to do your job, and you work hard and you practice hard and you know your assignments and you know how to line up and you know all the calls and you studied your opponent and you're a talented player, you're going to get stats. It's going to happen. So you don't have to go out and chase stats. You don't have to go out and make stats happen. You just have to go out and play the game for the love of the game. And that's the biggest thing that, I feel like we've got to change is we've got to get kids to understand it's a game. You're playing a game. Yes, you may get a college education out of it, but that shouldn't be the number one priority. And with a lot of our kids, that is the number one priority, whether it's because of what they want or because what they think they want, or they just want social media attention.
Yeah. And I mean, I've heard you talk to kids, and I've even talked to kids about, you know, they grow up and they think that they should only play one position. And it's kind of like the only thing you should really matter is being on the field. Like, I only cared about being on the field. I didn't care where I played. Obviously, I wanted to play running back, which I did. But I mean, even when I went to Orange Park, I played safety, but I was just like, I just want to play. And I think the stats thing is like, and I know you told me every other school has the same issue. I'm only noticing it because I'm at this school currently, and it's just they only care about what they look like, even if it's like a 50-7 loss. It's kind of like, oh, let me get my highlight out because I made one good pass. Um, and talking about off season, to kind of get off the season real fast, how do you keep the kids motivated? Because even like during the season, you still have students that aren't motivated. So like, what are some things that, you're talking about building the program, showing like we need to get the kids to understand like, football is a year round thing, even though it's only during the fall and spring technically. But how do you manage the behaviors? Because we do have behaviors. I mean, every school has behaviors, but you know, dealing with behaviors during the off season, making sure they're on time, because the principal we have now has made it really strict about, prom, sports in general, no OSS, only a certain amount of tardies. So how do you as a coach kind of reinforce that with the football players that, are possibly going to be stars, not technically stars, but just your starters, to keep them motivated during that off season?
Uh, you'll always you'll always find out real quick which your kids you can count on because after the season ends, you see who works out in class, even though the season's over, who comes after school. You know, you'll always know right away who really wants to play, and then you'll figure out who just plays because it's convenient. So we've already had this week on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We've already had 10, 15 guys staying after school and asking me if I'm going to be there after school. The hardest part for the kids is they don't understand, as a coach, especially as you get older, when when you're doing it 7 days a week, 70, 80, 90 hours a week, when the season ends and these kids are eager to get better and they want to keep going, they don't understand that you need to kind of decompress a little bit and you need to focus on some other things. Um, and that's always the hardest part because they don't have anything else. They have nowhere else to go, nothing else to do. And, they don't understand that, hey guys, look, it's a long season. There's a lot of things that go on now that we don't have to practice or we don't have to do. I want to enjoy, I want to play golf a little bit. I want to get back to either working out or doing different things. I want to do Playfast things and podcasts and other things. But we have a group of kids that want to win and they want to have success. They just don't know how to handle it. So like I said, we've had 15 kids from ninth graders to 11th graders, from, our best kid with 25 Power Five offers to our ninth grade kids that don't even know what college football is. They've come after school every day. Classes have been going, pretty good for the most part. Most of the kids have been working out, and now we get ready for weightlifting season. So now the workouts have to get heavier and a little bit more intense because there is no more physicality of a season going on. So you'll know that was always the first thing I figured out right away. You find out who your leaders are. You find out the kids that really want to play when football's gone. The ones that football's convenient for, you may not see. If they're not in your weight training class, you may not see them again until April. And if they are in your weight training class, you may have to tell them every day, hey, you need to get out here and lift. You may have to go in the locker room and get them out. That, to me, that's when you know you got something heading in the right direction. If you don't have to tell the dress out and lift, if you don't have to tell kids to get out of the locker room, if you don't have to tell kids what to do in school all the time when they're doing it because they want to do it, you've got it going in the right direction. And when you're losing, with losing is all the negatives come out. So it's the same thing with education. When you're a C, all everybody wants to talk about is the negatives when you probably have hundreds of great kids on your campus that have 3.8s and 4.0s and 4.4s, and they're in class all the time. But when something's not going right in any business, all you're going to focus on is the negative, the negative, the negative. So, it's also part of my job and our job and at the school and the principal and the AD. And, that's where social media is a good thing. You need to get out there all the positives that you're doing. You need people to understand that you've got kids playing college football. You had two state weightlifting champions 2 years ago. You had a track 400-meter champion, and you got, kids playing Division I football, Division II football, NAIA football. You got kids running Division I track. You got kids on your team that have multiple offers. Those are all the things that you've got to get out there to the community, to sell your program to the community, to go, hey, look, I know we went 3-7. I know you have a certain image or perception of Orange Park, but that's not really factually correct. Why don't you actually come out and see what we do and what we've got going on? And that's always, an interesting part too, is, how do we take our kids and the ones that really want to be part of a program, and how do we make them the representatives of our program, and how do we have them sell that program to other people?
Yeah. And like with weightlifting, yeah, as I work out during, the fifth period for the most part. But how do you keep them, I guess, accountable for, and I'm going to ask a question where I'm probably going to answer it, but like, how do you keep them accountable in the classroom? Because back when I was in high school, a lot of the coaches were at the school. So like, if I'm walking into the hall, I would see like Coach Frale, and I'm like, I probably should do my work. But like with you, obviously you have your own classes first through six. And we don't have any coaches on campus, do we?
Yeah, we have a math
So,
teacher, so
okay. So
we have
we
a
have
math
one.
teacher. You got
So,
Coach Taylor. You got Coach Taylor's in the gym. Coach Mackin is a math teacher in the main building, and then Coach Riley was with the ESE unit. So there's some out there. They're just not. You know, you'd love to have four coaches in the main building, two on the first floor, two on the second floor. They can be out and about. They can see who's late. They can see who's going to class. They can see who's, what they need to do. The thing that's really hurt us is they've taken away the access to see all of their, I can only see the kids that are in my class. I used to be able to, when you were playing, I used to be able to pull up focus or terms or whatever we were using at the time, and I could see everybody's grades. I could see their attendance. I could see all that stuff. And now it's kind of been taken away. So you got to go ask people for information if you don't have kids in class. And then, unfortunately, you find out the hard way when it's too late that somebody's in ISS or somebody got OSS, and it's like, well, I had no idea. You're just telling me now. How am I supposed to, how you want me to fix a problem when I'm just finding out now?
yeah. And I think that's communication based on for both parties, but it's kind of like if you don't know, it's like, how can you do anything? They can't blame you for them not telling you. But I guess it's one of those, I figured somewhere higher up would do it. Um, and I've talked to a couple of teachers because they have football players in their class or a basketball player because basketball season's coming up. And she was just like, how am I going to keep these kids motivated during the off season? And especially with our new principal's rules with, being tardy, having a 2.0, if you want to go to prom, homecoming, and all that fun stuff. And I told her, I was like, just get a sticky note, put, if your grade drops and you get this, if you get it below 2.0, you're like, you can't play spring. You could be the starting running back. If this is not happening, you're not playing. So I told her to get sticky notes, figure out what sport they play, put it on their desk. So that way she's not yelling at them. She can just point to it. And that's why it's an everyday reminder of saying, hey, like I could sleep in class all day, but if my grade drops, it's my fault because I see it every day. And and it is hard because you can't email every single teacher because then you're getting emails every day. Um, So I think trying to figure out that balance of, and I feel like when I think about this, I'm thinking about those big schools where the coaches don't have a class and they can just walk around and do whatever they want. Not necessarily do whatever they want, but they can, visit the teachers' classes. But in your case, you do have classes to where like you can't just be like, all right, guys, I'm gonna go check on this one kid. Um, so is there any way of like maybe helping, not even helping, but just kind of communicating with the teachers? As I said, I know it's difficult because you have so many kids and then you can't actually access their grades. And that's maybe something that the AD and you and the principal could sit down and kind of figure that out. So that way you're on top of the kids that need to be on top of, or something like that. Have you ever thought about that? Or I guess, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's you always want teachers to know that you're there to help, and you want, open communication between teachers. If you're having a problem, send us an email, see if we can help you figure out the problem, whether it be, a discipline problem, a tardiness problem. But at the same time, on the flip side, that's also, as a teacher, that's your job. Your job is to teach kids. And if you think that, you know, you only use athletics as motivation, well, then that's just a cop out as a teacher to say that you can't reach your class. So if you're always using some other external motivation, what's your motivation to wake up every day and teach your class? What are you doing to try and keep a captive audience? What are you doing if you're always having to go to athletics or somewhere else to get, some, support is one thing. And, as a football coach, you're part of the staff. You're there to support everybody. But I don't teach your class. I don't teach. I got my own classes. I have my own life. I have my own things going on. You have to figure out how to motivate kids. That's your job. You have to figure out how to keep. Now, if you figure out that on basketball is what motivates a kid and that's how you use it, that's fine. But what about the 25 other kids in your class that don't do anything? How do you motivate them? So to
Yeah.
me, it's kind of a two-way for teachers. I think sometimes teachers take an easy way out and say, well, I'll use athletics to help me get these kids motivated. And well, heck, come to some of our practices. I should be, maybe I should ask a math teacher, how do I get this kid to tackle?
Yeah.
You want to help me get this kid to tackle? You want to help me get this kid to understand how to read blocks? I mean, it's a two-way street. So we want to help as much as we can, but at the same time, teachers have to provide their own motivation. That's your
Yeah.
job. That's why you do it. If I can help you in any way, I certainly want to, and I certainly want to be there. And I've always been there for teachers, and our kids can go to extra tutoring, extra help anytime as long as they come with a note. So it's not like we say football first, football only, but I feel like sometimes from teachers, that's a cop out to say, well, how am I going to keep them motivated without football? Well, that's what about the other 25 kids that don't play football? How do you keep them motivated?
Yeah. I mean, being a teacher and having players, former players in my class, I think some teachers look at it as they see a player or a sports figure in their class, like, okay, they're probably going to be good during season. And then after season, then I don't know what I'm going to do with them. But I think that they have to go into the classroom. It's kind of like when I was in elementary school. There's always like that one kid that gets in your class that like five teachers had, and they're like, oh my gosh, this kid is terrible. You're gonna hate him. And like your mindset's already, okay, I'm gonna get him. He's gonna be the worst kid in class. Like I'm just gonna do whatever with him. And it's the same thing with athletic kids. It's kind of like, well, they play a sport, they're probably not gonna behave. So I'm gonna blame it on the coach or blame it on them not having sports to kind of uh, make them be able to be focused. And I've always looked at it as you got to treat them like Susan, that doesn't do anything after school. Is, as you said, you have to find ways to motivate them and not use that sports as an excuse, because some teachers do. They're just like, oh well, he's a starter and he's good during the season, but as soon as the season ends, it's kind of like, I don't know how to control him. It's like, well, you should figure that out at the beginning of the school year and not wait until the season's over to now complain about it. But I think if you're a teacher and you're listening to this, and I know a lot of coaches have maybe their own class. I know you said you taught history. Is you have to be able to treat obviously every kid's different, but you can't look at them as, okay, he's an athlete, he'll be fine for this amount of weeks, and Susan, she'll be fine, and then Billy, he'll be fine. But I think some teachers do use that as a cop out to where you know their classroom management isn't the best, so they're just going to use sports as an excuse. And then some things that you feel like after this season, maybe you should improve. Um, and I feel like I'm asking that, but I feel like there's a lot of things that need to happen first. But like just you as a coach, you know, what do you feel like, you've been doing this for 22, 25 years, coaching 22. Like, I feel like you've changed over time. And I've told kids this. I was like, you have a nicer coaching act than I had. Granted, I really didn't deal with you on the football field. I had Coach Frawley, but just in general, how do you think like each year is going? Like, do you feel like you're improving as one, a person, two, like coaching wise and communication wise, like with, other coaches, admin, parents, players, like that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, every year you get older. When I was younger, I probably didn't think about things as much. I didn't think about the outcome of things as much. I just kind of did things the way I wanted to do them and reacted how I wanted to react, and then dealt with it later. As you get older, you start realizing that there's repercussions for certain things, and you can't coach the way we used to in the '90s, and you can't be as you can't be as it's always energetic and loud. Sometimes comes across as to some people comes across as crazy or out of control, and it's like, well, no, if you have passion and enthusiasm about your job, and you still are healthy enough to have enough energy, and you want to run around and you want to yell and you want to be animated, you know to me, that's more somebody who cares. That's like, I'm trying to control every scenario on a Friday night, and I'm trying to get kids to act the right way. And if they're not, I'm trying to run out onto the field and get them off the field. And I'm trying to run out and make sure they understand that I'm getting my point across. And, the one thing with today's kids that I try to tell them all the time that I never used to have to tell anybody was, listen to the message, not the tone. Don't worry about the tone of my voice, or don't worry about so when I grew up in New York, I grew up in the late '70s, early '80s. There were a lot of words used that you can't get away with using now. And it was normal. You heard them every day. But when my coach was talking to me, it was how he talked to me. It wasn't the words he used. It was, you know, how he talked to me. And I knew, when he was being constructive with his criticism. I knew when I was in trouble. I knew when I was doing good things. I knew when I was doing bad things. And I never really worried about the words that they used. And I never went home and told my parents the words that they used. I was able to, understand the message. And a lot of times that gets lost in translation nowadays, because you can't, I think you can still be tough. I still think, you can still be hardcore. I think each program is different. If you've got 150 kids that want to play football, I think you can, maybe have some different standards that you hold kids to, because if 50 of them don't make it, you still have 100. You've got 60 kids in your program trying to play football, and you're trying to put two teams together with 60 or 65 kids. Yes, you want to have standards, but are you willing to go down to playing 17 or 8 kids, or having low numbers, you know, um, to where, like we talked about, there should be a standard. And it's good that, we're trying to get tougher on things like prom and grad bash and other things, because those aren't guarantees. Those should be things that are earned. Those playing football should still be a privilege and not a right. You don't have the right to play football. It's a privilege for you to be able to get to play football. And we just need to get back to a point where kids have to do things the way we want to do them. And if they don't want to do them that way, then, we have to cut bait. But the problem as a head coach cutting bait is then you've got to deal with all the other things that are going to go on. There's going to be meetings, and there's going to be, you've got to have everything documented to say, hey, look, this is what we do. He doesn't want to do it. he's late, or he's got bad grades, or he's got this problem. So, um, but again, it all goes back to the same thing. Losing magnifies everything. You know, the simple poor behaviors get magnified. People look at, your program with a fine tooth comb, and they find all the little things that they think are problems. When you're winning, a lot of those things get hidden, and nobody knows what's going on behind closed doors. Nobody knows that you have certain issues, or kids have certain issues, because all they know is that you're winning. So, you know, every program has problems, every school has problems, every coach has problems. Um, it's just a matter of how you navigate those waters and try and come out on the other end.
Yeah, yeah, because I mean, we kind of talked about it. It's kind of like when you don't have that many kids, it's kind of like it's really nothing I mean, you can do stuff, but now you're dwindling your team down to pretty much nothing, which could cause injuries because now they're not getting off the field. Um, so after school, so for like next year, we talked about like, getting the schedule ready, kind of keeping kids motivated during the off season. Um, like when do you take a break? Like when off season, like how do coaches, I know all coaches are different, but do you ever give yourself like that break of saying, okay, I'm giving myself maybe a month or like 2 weeks just to kind of like do whatever you want, spend time with your family, play golf. Like, how do you navigate that? Because obviously a lot of the kids now, I think they feel motivated that, hey, like we just had this, not a good season. Like I'm trying to improve myself. Like, but where do you take your break at?
Um, Usually the month of December is a pretty good, mid-November through December is about the 6 weeks that I kind of decompress a little bit, because in January weightlifting team's going to start, and I'm coaching that, so I'll have not only practices again, but off-season football workouts will start. And so this is kind of from last Friday till probably January 15th or around there somewhere. That's the time that I try to make sure, you know, there are days that I'm going to leave contract time, or as soon as, I'm going to try and beat other teachers out the door that have been beating me out the door for the last, you know, 12, 13 weeks. And there's going to be days where I tell the kids, hey, look, it's not going to be open after school. Bring your stuff with you. You can run on your own. You can do stuff on your own, but I need a time, because the other hard part people don't understand is when you teach your player day in class and you have them in the weight room every day, there's never ever a time to teach. You're with them every minute, every day. You got to see them. You got to see them in season, off season. You got to see them when you're winning. You got to see them when you're losing. So to me, it's more important to get away and have them get away from you, so it's not overkill all the time with I'm tired. Says it's the same voice, it's the same message, and then off a year like we had, you got to find ways to change things up, and you got to talk to your players about, all right, what do you think we need to do? What do we need to do in the off season? How do we, you know, you start thinking now. For me, mentally, I never really take a break. I'm always thinking about the next thing, what we need to do on offense and defense and special teams, and what we need to do in the offseason with our offseason program. And I'm coming up with ideas like stats, strictly thinking about team success and all these other things. So it never really stops. But for me, physically, this is the time of year where for the next 6 weeks, I'm going to stay and do workouts. I went and watched the team practice this week. There's going to be times, but then there's going to be times where I go and hit golf balls. There's going to be times where I go and putt. There's going to be times where I just go and hang out. So probably mid-November to December, if we're not still in the playoffs, it's going to get a little bit easier. But at the same time, that's kind of the time of year where I start to put more Patreon content out and try and do more YouTube stuff now that I have time. So physically, the break is the next 6 weeks, but mentally, I don't know if there ever really is a break.
Yeah. I was going to tell you about how you're talking about, how coaches talk to players, and players, they don't listen to the message, but they only hear the yelling. And yes, I've heard, some of the sidelines, or I've been on the sidelines hearing some of the yelling, and you can tell by the kid's face, it's kind of like they weren't actually listening. They were just hearing the noise. And when I was your player, we had Coach Frawley, and Coach Frawley is just known for yelling. That's just who he was. And I nothing really bothered me really. Like in anybody could yell at me, but Coach Frawley yelled at me like every single day, all day, every day. One, I was 125 pounds. I was 5'5", and that was it. The season before you had a running back that was like 250, maybe 5'7", and then I came. So I got yelled at all the time. But then I think it was my junior year as well. We got a freshman running back that was 250 range, like maybe 5'10", 5'11". And every time Coach Frawley said something to him, he just turned red. He couldn't handle it. And I told him, I was like, that's just how he talks. Like I get yelled at every day. I'm not even half the size of you. But I guess some kids just they can't handle the tone of yelling. And I don't know how can you help students understand like, hey, just because I'm yelling does not mean that I'm mad. Because obviously from a parent's perspective or a spectator's perspective, it's like, oh my gosh, the coach is chewing them out. But usually the coach is just telling them what they should do right. But the kid is just like, I'm always right, I'm never wrong. So I don't know how we could kind of, I don't want to say fix it, but get the kids to understand like, just because I'm yelling, it doesn't mean I'm mad at you. Um, and that could be kind of like an off-season type, group thing, like session that you have with the players during like maybe a weightlifting. Instead of lifting weights one day, okay guys, we're gonna have just a team meeting and talk about, you know, building character, building stuff like that. I know it takes time out of weightlifting because that's the goal, but some kids need to hear that because I mean, we have kids that are just very sensitive, and you raise your voice a little bit and it's kind of like, oh my gosh, like don't do that. So I don't know. I think that you are right about that is, as soon as you raise your voice, it's kind of like, coach hates me and he doesn't know what he's talking about type thing. Um, but yeah, that was my last thing. But the last thing I wanted to talk about was the you have a lineman on our team that has 20. I thought he had 20.
He's got at least 20.
Yeah, like 20 D1 offers. So like how does that change the mindset of everybody else on the team? Because I feel like now people are like, okay, well, he's getting all these offers. Do I deserve those offers as well? Like, does that change the mindset of some of the players? Because I feel like some players think that they should get maybe an FSU offer or, a FAMU offer or something, maybe not as big as, Georgia or Duke, but something up there. Do you think that kind of messes with some of the players' minds because they feel like, well, if he's getting them, I should get them too?
Yeah, I mean that's always going to be the difficult thing to manage as a coach because all your kids. You'd like every one of your kids to get a scholarship. It makes you look better as a coach. There's not a kid out there that you don't want to get a scholarship or to get a chance to play college football. Our kids really don't understand what it takes to play college football is a big part of the problem. Um, and our kids don't understand that, you know, there's certain people that have things that you don't have. And, you can't put yourself in that situation. So when I played in high school, I played with a future NFL linebacker and a Division I player. And, I talk to our kids about this all the time. I would see Notre Dame come in and Boston College come in, and I would see West Virginia and Penn State and Pittsburgh. And I knew coach was never calling me into his office to talk to those people. I was 5'8", 130 pounds. I was smart enough to understand those aren't the schools that are going to call me in to talk about playing football. And, it was also my best friend, a guy that was in my wedding party. And, I never held it against him because he had all these opportunities and he was 6 foot, 230 pounds. He was every bit as fast as I was playing linebacker and I'm playing receiver and I'm 100 pounds less than him. he lifted and worked out all the time. I didn't want to lift when I was in high school. I just wanted to play sports. So you've got to be able to separate the two to say, hey, look, a lot of you have the opportunity or the ability to play college football. It's not going to be at that level. I don't want to, everybody can dream. Everybody has the right to dream, but you also need to have a focus and a goal and an attainable goal. Try and explain to kids that, if you got a 1.9 or a 2.0, talking about playing college football and getting offers is a waste of your time. You're just doing it for the attention to say that people want you to play football. You're not going to get an offer with a 1.9 GPA. So that's one of the first issues. You're 5'10" and somebody else is 6'4", you have to realize that you're not them. And it's just the way the world works. I mean, we weren't all meant to be NFL players. We weren't all meant to be NBA players, but we should still have goals and we should still have a work ethic and we should still understand, I'd like to coach at Alabama. I'd like to coach the Jaguars, but I'm a high school coach. That make it right for me to sit around all the time and say, why do these guys have these jobs and I don't? Why did these guys get opportunities and I didn't? The kids that want to do that, they're always looking for a way out. They're always looking for a reason, an answer, an excuse. And they're going to struggle with anything in life because it's always going to be somebody else's fault. And, so, I mean, it's great because you get exposure and now you tell these kids, hey, look, and even more so in the community, it's like, hey, you can't say that if you go to Orange Park, you don't have opportunities. Look at the opportunities this kid has. Look at the schools that are coming in our office. Look at the schools that are calling to talk about, well, we go play West Side and Will Muschamp, who used to be the head coach at Florida, who works at Georgia now, is watching the game. If you're playing in that game and he's there to watch somebody else, all you have to do is be a player and make some plays and make him go, coach, who is that? So you have to be thankful that you have those opportunities and you have to appreciate them because they don't come around often. And, but as a coach, it's always going to be tough to navigate because the ones that don't have the offers that they think they should have, or, they're going to be upset. They're going to be mad. They're going to be angry. And then the tougher part is when they do things on the field to, try and solidify the fact that they should have offers. And now they're not executing the offense or the defense the way it needs to be executed because they're trying to get stats and they're trying to get, huddle highlights. So, it all goes roundabout to what we originally talked about when you're losing and, the attitudes that you need to change. And, the focus should be on being a good teammate, winning a game, doing your job the way it needs to be done, because those things are going to carry on with you the rest of your life, whether you play football or not. So, and I also try to talk to guys all the time. Been doing this for 25 years, 22 years as a head coach. So on average, if you said I had 80 kids a year, I've coached 1,700 to 2,000 kids, and, less than 20 of them have been full scholarship football players, and less than 50 of them have been, Division I or 1AA players. So when you look at the percentages as a coach, doing this for 22 years as a head coach and coaching 2,000 kids, there was a time through my run at Ridgeview where we had 2 kids that were Division I players, and I was there for 14 years, and we only had 2 true Division I players. Now we had some other kids that went 1AA or non-scholarship, but kids don't understand how hard it is to do. They just think they deserve the right to do it. Understand the percentages of how many kids in the country are playing high school football. They don't know what those other, you never see what other people are doing. The problem is our kids look at things and they go, oh, I'm better than him. Oh, really? Then why are we 3-7? Or why are we, it's okay to understand that someone is a better player than you. They're bigger than you. They're faster than you. It's, self-defense mechanism to go, oh, well, he only has those offers because he goes to this school or he went to this camp or he went to that. No, he's got the offers because he's a pretty good player. He's a better player than you. If you were a better player, you'd have more offers. So it's that part of it is tough, but it's also enjoyable because I get to see what the big time is like. I get to see all these programs showing interest in our kids, and I get to tell people that we have a kid that people are interested in and these schools are interested in. And, And then you try to, for me, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to catapult that to other kids and get other kids looks maybe that they deserve, while at the same time also using that as motivation to say, hey, look, you aren't him. You don't have a 3.5. You're not 6'4". You're not 280. You're not as physical as him. You're not as strong as him. You don't. So no, you're not going to get those things. And,
Yeah.
at the same time, though, I think Roderick does a pretty good job. It's getting harder for him each offer that comes in and the bigger the offers get. But, Roderick, for the most part, has been a pretty humble kid. And, the toughest part is that you'll find out how tight your circle really is when people in your circle don't have offers and you do. You'll see if they're really truly in your circle or not. So he's going to have to, and those are all the things that he'll have to navigate himself, and now you've got the uh, the name and likeness stuff, and high school kids making money and college kids making money. So he's going to have to navigate that, and so it's going to be a slippery slope for him. But he's a great player. He deserves everything he gets. He works hard. He's one of the ones that comes after school and gets other kids to come after school, and he tells them, he tells them how to lift and what to do and to work harder and to do this and to do it. So it's just, he's a good kid to be around, and it's going to be enjoyable. I'm going to enjoy that part for the next year. I can tell you that much.
Yeah. I mean, he seems pretty to himself for the most part. I mean, I know people judge a lot of people based on the social media. And I mean, a lot of the stuff he posts on social media is just him lifting or him, at school, typical high school stuff. But he isn't like one of those like flamboyant type, oh, I have all these offers type thing. And just that's just me seeing him in the hallways or in the cafeteria. I've talked to him a couple times. Well, I lift with him, not lift with him, but we're in the same weightlifting class. But he's not one that I don't think. I mean, he might be something outside of the school, but he seems like he's carrying himself pretty well. Like I don't see any issues, but I do see, the friend circle that could be an issue if, you know, they don't see the same results as he's getting. Maybe not from the same schools, just from smaller schools in general. He even posted on his social media, I guess, the last game. Players have been DMing him, trying to get him to transfer schools to go to another school because of the record. And he posted, he was like, "No, I'm not going." Like, you know, best players are built through like trials and tribulations, something of that sort. And I think it's commendable that he put that out there openly because you've had players in the past and like the last couple of years that other schools have tried to ease their way in taking them, and now obviously transferring is way easier. And he's been here since he was 9. It's kind of like Kendi started 9th grade. He stayed through everything, and look where he's at. Roderick, 9th grade, stayed. So people know, like, if they come to Orange Park, they know that oh, this kid's gonna be something. I can build them up to be what it's like. You're Vince McMahon. You just you talent when you see it. And obviously, I didn't know Roderick when he was that. I just met him this year. I thought he was a senior this year. He's not. But you can recognize talent, and I feel like a lot of students don't understand that, or as we talked about, they feel like they've grown up playing one position. That's the only position they should play. No matter what you say, no matter what anybody says, I'm playing that position, and I'll leave the school to go play that position. And I think that a lot of kids are now understanding, like, hey, maybe I have to play a different position to get my name out there. And it's kind of like it's too late now. Like it's too late. But no, with him, I think it's one. It puts a lot of notoriety on Orange Park. Um, it kind of shows kids like, hey, he worked hard since he was 9th grade. Look where he's at now. And two, it shows that he's very loyal to the program. He's not going to leave. He's going to stay through, good seasons, bad seasons, even his senior year. So
No, I mean,
play fast. What's next with that?
I've got some ideas, things I want to do. I want to do some, I want to do some guest stuff where I bring coaches in to talk about their on X's and O's. So it's not always my opinion, what other people do that have success, talk about what they do in their program, building culture and what they do with accountability. And, so, Playfast has been Coach Mac for 8 years. And, uh, I think it's time to get a couple different voices in there. I'd like to do, like I said, some guest work, bring some people in, maybe even do some podcasts with people across the country that are coaching. I think it'd be pretty cool to do a podcast with a coach from every state and hit all 50 states and do, you know, one coach in every state and do a podcast and talk about football in their state and their town and what their programs are like. And then, get out there in this profession. We're all dealing with the same things. We're not the only ones. We may be talking about this right now about our high school that you teach at, I coach at. Um, but every other school has the same issues. Every other school has a lot of the same problems. And you just need to talk to people to find that out. And then you need to find out how they get through it, how they get over it. And so, I'm looking forward to doing that. Looking forward to doing, some different things on Patreon I've been doing a lot of film work lately with our games and taking people through what we run and why we run it. And so I'm looking forward to doing that stuff again, maybe some webinars and trying to find a venue maybe for a summer Playfest clinic. We can't do it this winter because we won't get the venue we had probably again until 2023, maybe, if we try and go a year in advance and get it in January, because they're picking up again with weddings after, now that everything is almost back to normal. And so, do we want to wait another year to do one? Do we want to do one at a different venue? Do we want to do one in the summer, or do we want to keep the winter idea? So, a lot of things going on that way. And then, for me, just studying and trying to figure out what I need to do to get better with my program and watching, watching YouTube and doing what I do.
Just out here. All right. So is there anything else you want to add?
Well, entertainment wise, the only thing I'll add to you is, in the wrestling world that we talk about sometimes, exactly what I told you was going to happen is already happening. So, competition is good. Competition's good for everybody, but there's a justifiable double standard. And now all of a sudden, a company is signing 8 million people just like the WWE used to. They're having people that they're signing as big names, but yet they're not getting, the same push, because they're finding out the hard way. If you put that roster together with that much talent and you only have X amount of TV time, you're going to have a hard time pushing those guys. So, and people are finding out now that there is other places to go. There's other places to make money, but you got to be smart about what you're doing, because you can't all go to the same roster. Otherwise you end up with the same problems you had in WWE. You're a guy, you think you're better. You don't get a push or you don't get a run because there's 80 other big names now. So it's interesting how that company has become very similar. Older guys that are getting pushes, older guys. Now they say they're there to help younger guys, but in the WWE, when that happened, it was burying, John Cena had the golden shovel and he buried everybody. Well, in AEW, when it happens, they're promoting younger talent. So it's just interesting and unique. People that love wrestling will love it because it's better for the product. I don't watch it as much as I used to, but there's certainly a bunch of great matches and a bunch of great things that go on at AEW. There's some really good things that go on in TNA Impact and New Japan, and there's great things that go on in WWE. So just interesting, when we started doing a podcast, we talked a little bit about wrestling. We talked on our different thoughts. AEW was a new company coming up, and 2 years later,
they were going against NXT at the time.
Yeah, and 2 years later, now they're now almost as big. I don't know if they'll ever be as big as but they're almost as big, and they're doing a lot of great things now. But what you find out is they're using a lot of it. Maybe their shows are different to some people. Maybe their storylines are different to some people. But those people were probably so mad and upset at WWE that they would have watched anything, like in the world you live in with Marvel and DC and stuff like that. If you've got one that's your favorite and they come out with and just do 8 things with movies that you just despise. At some point, you may watch DC or do something just because you're so mad at, at what they're doing, or how they did a certain character wrong, or a certain movie wrong, or a certain storyline wrong. You get so mad at something like that that you go the other way. And that's what happened in WWE. People just got so upset that things didn't go the way they wanted them to go all the time, that they just wanted something else to watch. And now that they got it, hopefully they're happy.
Yeah, I haven't really watched it, but I know like CM Punk's back, Daniel Bryanson's back, Chris Jericho's still there. I did notice that they have been bringing a lot of former UFC fighters there too. So I think it seems like they're trying to do the WCW angle where, they brought the athletes in. I know Paige Van Zant's been on. I know her husband's been on. So I see that as obviously they're trying to be different, but then at the same time, it's kind of like they're not actual wrestlers. Like you have wrestlers that who have been dreaming about this moment that now you're
But
just bringing in.
isn't that what WWE's done for 90 years?
Bring in outside people. I don't remember. I mean, they've okay.
Think about
No,
WrestleMania. Think about,
yes,
think about Mike Tyson. Think about, think about Cain Velasquez. Think about Brock Lesnar as one of your biggest stars. You know, think about all the different people that they brought in over the years, whether it be WrestleMania or other storylines. They've been doing it forever, and other people are doing it because it's what makes business work.
yes. I mean, it proves your point, right? I'm saying that, but it seems like when WWE did it, it was more for like the bigger platforms. Now, I don't know what AEW's big platforms are. I don't know their pay-per-views. I don't know like their WrestleMania pay-per-view. It just seems like a lot of
They've got
these,
one this week.
maybe that's why I've been seeing a lot of the UFC or ex-UFC people on there. But I did notice that and I was like, oh, this seems like,
Well, but there's also, for former athletes, or whether it be football players, Dennis Rodman back in the day, Kevin Green had a little bit of a run, Steve McMichael. Um, you know, Now that there's another avenue outside of WWE, there's another place for these guys to go, and men and women, to go make money doing something that they can still physically do, bringing, the UFC side of it, or the boxing side of it, or whatever it is. They can bring that over and now become actors on TV, playing into storylines, and they can still make a lot of money because their name draws, and they don't have to get beat to death or put their body's still going to be put on the line, and it's not injury free, but it's a lot different than fighting. Um,
yeah,
so I mean, I think but at the same time, it's the same. It's just the same
and
recipe. It
yeah,
works. Everybody knows it works. Even if you hate WWE, everybody knows it works. They know what works, how it works. So that's what they're trying to do.
yeah.
So
So I
on
mean,
that note,
yeah. So this was season 2, episode 2. Make sure you follow Coach Mac. Well, I feel like you should say that on Coach Mac at Coach Mac 887. What is it?
40,
8740
8740.
8740
Coach
on
Mac
Twitter.
8740 on Twitter. Coach Mac 8740 on Instagram.
If you're looking for him on Facebook, he does have a Playfast, but usually you'll get me, and then I'll direct you to find Coach Mac unless I'm with him. You can find me on Twitter at Colby Grant 24, or if you want to see my pictures, it's Grant Visuals. But other than that, I mean, this is, we're back. We're going to try to be more consistent. I know football season's over, but even when football season comes again, I think we're going to at least try to get, a couple episodes out during the season, at least if it takes, at least 3 episodes. So
What we ought to do next year is have a weekly episodic version of the podcast where you go week by week, and the ups and the downs and the trials and the tribulations, and you do it like every Wednesday.
that might be hard for you.
It might be, but we can make it happen.
All right. Yeah, we'll try. That'll be the goal for next year. Just try to get, like maybe not as long as this one, maybe like a good 20 minutes or 30, kind of like a reflector type episode. And then, you know, once the season's over, you can have, you know, coaches on. You know, when you do that, I'll step back because, you know, that's your thing. I'll just edit everything. You guys
Appreciate everybody that's going to watch this everywhere that you're going to put it out to, people on Patreon, iTunes, wherever it is. Hopefully you like it. Hopefully, you know, there's people out there that enjoy what we do, how we do it. And, you know, if you don't, it's your choice to not watch, not listen. But if you do, hit us up. If you ever have any questions you want us to answer, or anything you want me to talk about, just hit me up on Twitter or hit me up on YouTube, and we will discuss that. But remember, you won't play well until you play fast. I will see every one of you next time. And Colby, I'll see you tomorrow.